It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That is Turbo, Judas Priest with a little Out in the Cold. And this is Neely rocking with your Classic Metal Show. We've been working along here with getting this whole video thing set up here. And we're kind of working out the bugs. And let me see here. Just trying to figure out how all this is working out, because it is all new stuff. So just be patient, my friends, because Chris will be joining me in a minute, and we'll get our shit together, as it were. So all right, I think I got Chris involved here now. Yeah, there he is.
I'm here. Hello.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. Well, on the line, we've got the host of Cobras and Fire, Bakko. Welcome to the Classic Metal Show there, Bakko.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You just happen to be on a night where we're kind of fucking things up here.
No, that's all right. Then I'm the perfect time for me to come in, I guess.
So very good. Well, Bakko, I got to be honest with you. I was only turned on to your podcast here recently. I wasn't aware of it. Obviously, Chris was a guest on your show here last week, which I listened, and I listened to, the way that you put together your show. How long have you been doing Cobras and Fire?
We are just coming up on 4 years, so I think we started about April 2000, it would have been 15.
Okay. Awesome, man. And have you seen like the steady growth that I guess you look for? I mean, and that's such a hard question, man, because, what do you really look for is always like the weird thing. Are you just doing it for fun? Are you doing it for audience or some balance or what?
Yeah, obviously you want listeners. Early on, we were definitely just doing it for fun because you're not seeing a lot of numbers. And I'm not even sure, like we get excited about numbers, but other shows might go, wow, that's a bad week, But yeah, we definitely have, especially this last year. It was, it was over a 50% growth from the year before. And it seemed like towards most of that happened right around the second half of the year, too. So, and those numbers have just kind of steadily grown and kind of, they just continue to stay consistent, Years prior, peaks and valleys. We had certain episodes that did really well. We did a Bruce Kulick interview that, of course, the Kiss diehards jumped on and gave us some decent numbers, but that wouldn't be indicative of most of our shows. But now we kind of get a pretty steady, we have an idea what we're going to get every week. So.
Right. And now, and for people that haven't listened, you kind of have almost like two shows in one. You have shows like you did with me that are primarily just, you and the guest talking. But then you have the shows with your co-host, Loose Cannon, that are just you guys kind of shooting the shit. And, very much in the same way Neely and I tend to feel like we're doing our show, where we're just kind of, if you put 2 mugs of beer in front of us and a half-drink barmaid, it would feel appropriate, no?
Yeah, I would agree 100% with what you're saying. We initially tried to work interviews in where both of us were together, but trying to schedule the guest and the two of us turned into a nightmare. So at first we were kind of splitting them, but lately it's just been easier for my schedule than Luce's. But yeah, our basic show, we have like segments where we'll cover a topic, but sometimes we'll take a theme or we'll dig into an album. But I would actually compare it a lot. I would say shows like yours were definitely an influence on kind of how I wanted to approach it. A little bit of humor, not taking yourself too serious, and having some fun with it, but also, not sounding like a total jackass all the time anyway.
Right.
Well, definitely. Well, very, very good. Now, Bakko, what is your background as far as, doing some audio stuff? Because I notice one of the bitches that I have, only because that's my particular forte, especially when it comes to the technical end of the audio. I noticed that you do a lot of great editing in song clips. Obviously, when Chris was on the show, he sounded really good and clean, like he was right in the studio with you. Do you have any background in that, or was that your goal to have a clean sounding podcast, or how did you put that together?
Well, first, let me say thank you for mentioning that. I just appreciate hearing that somebody does notice. Yeah, the goal obviously is to make it sound as clean as you can. A lot of shows do a good job, and some don't. But my background would be I've been in a band for, I don't know, of some sort for most of my life, starting in the 20s, so going, 25 years back now. But I built a recording studio in my basement in 2008. So I have like a whole Pro Tool setup down there, and I learned about editing and using that software, through recording, my band. So that'd be the basic background I have. But I've worked with other, people in different studios when we were recording, before I had my own studio.
Right,
so,
right. Well, but
no professional training, but
But you have obviously you have some of the the knowledge and expertise in doing that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also worked at a college radio station for a few years, and when I was in school. So I mean, some of that stuff ties in a little bit to what you're asking, but the technical aspect, I would say, was more I just learned on my own.
Sure, absolutely. Well, good job. I appreciated listening to some. I like listening to podcasts, but if I even if the content is good or the hosts are pretty good, but if they got shitty or sound, I'm gonna tune out.
Yeah, I really gotta want to listen to what you're saying too if it sounds like shit.
No, there's no question, dude, and you guys definitely do. But fortunately for you, when you guys and as I told you when you and I were talking last week, I have listened, and I do subscribe. I'm one of those downloads every week when a new episode comes. And
thank you.
It's a fun listen, and that's what the thing that I try to I've been known to promote quite a few podcasts that I like, and people, they know that I'm into podcasting, and they ask me all the time what to listen to, and a lot of times I will tell them your podcast for the simple reason that, one, I hate stuff that just where it's very clinical sounding, and I know that's hard to do that in musical terms, but if you listen to, some of the podcasts like Loudwire's podcast, I'm not necessarily shitting on them, but when they were doing their podcast, I don't even know if they still are or not, but it was very clinical and very radio-y and very not us-ish. And I don't know how to explain it other than that. And when I listened to yours, I could, like I said before, I could easily see me pulling up the third bar stool and just saying, no, wait a minute, you're fucking wrong about Tony Martin, man. It's, Tony Martin was great on Tier or whatever. And then us starting to have that conversation. That's what you guys do, and you guys do it very well.
Well, let me ask you guys something, because you're both very opinionated people, and you clearly don't mind disagreeing with each other. One of the hurdles that we noticed early on, I shouldn't say a hurdle, one thing that we critiqued ourselves on very early on is that we kept trying to quantify or almost explain our opinion, and once we kind of talked out, it's like we should just say what we think and fuck anybody that really disagrees with it. Did you guys ever have that moment, or was it just more natural?
No, we're dicks from day one, dude.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely our default setting, but we felt we're throwing something out there. Like, we almost need to, make sure, well, it's okay if you think different. Of course, our attitude is it's an opinion. Of course it's okay if somebody else thinks different. Yeah,
no, dude, once you get into that realm of trying to justify what you're saying, you're just leaving. What you're doing is you're slowly opening the door for somebody to fucking stab you in the face. Because if you try and say, well, Tony Iommi is the greatest guitar player ever, which I'm just I don't even think that.
Sure.
But if you try to say that, you're just that just opened the door for the next guy to go, well, what the fuck? What about Yngwie? Tony couldn't do that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't worry about that stuff. In the end, and look, we're the most opinionated, I think, of everybody that's doing this kind of thing. and the thing that has always worked for us the most is that, we can't control if people agree or disagree with our opinion, but we can stand by it. And, you know, people definitely know what Neely likes. People definitely know what I like. And they actually will form opinion of music based on what they know about us. And by not having a varying opinion, then even if they don't agree with our opinion, it still gives it weight and substance. Don't you agree, Neely?
Yeah, well, exactly.
I do agree. And the thing is the key to this is opinion. We're not spouting fact here about anything. And, you know, just because it's my thought or my opinion or Chris's thought or his opinion doesn't make it the right opinion. It's just an opinion. And what we find, especially doing this show for 23 years, is that Chris has his fan base out of our group of listeners. I have my fan base. People like Chris's more direct or, you know, derogatory edge. Some people like my, I don't know what you want to call it, subtle approach. You know, so you know, there's different strokes, as the old saying goes, and no matter what the feedback, what the blowback, compliment or criticism, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to that. So you know, our show has always been a bit controversial, and we make no apologies for it.
Sure. And also, it makes a really boring podcasting if you stop every time to make sure people feel okay about disagreeing with you, you know. So the show's better if you just, you know, put it out there.
Yeah, well, you know, dude, it's interesting that you feel like you spent time, you know, justifying your opinions, because maybe I haven't listened far enough back or something, but I've never thought that.
Oh, it was pretty early on. We caught that we were doing it a lot on the show. And I think it was just like kind of nervousness and just trying to feel each other out. Like, we never met each other until about a year after we were doing the show. We kind of met through being writers at Decibel Geek, but, you know, he's always lived in a different state than I have. And so we've become, he's now one of my closest friends, you know, but through doing all this. But it just, we kind of learning on the fly a little bit. The early episodes are a little cringeworthy for us, I think, but I don't know. At a certain point, I think year 2, we kind of found our groove, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Did you have to find chemistry? Because that's one of the things. People are always surprised that Neely and I are in different states as well, and we've been doing it since the advent. I mean, we've been doing it from different states since what, Neely, 2005?
Yeah, we started very, very early on the very earliest voice over IP systems that were available. This was pre-Skype.
Yeah.
And we tried all kinds of softwares that were available, and it was a lot of hit and miss. In fact, I think, again, I don't know everybody out there, but I think Chris and I were probably one of the first ones, if not the first ones, to do a show across 3 states.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but dude, the one thing that we always knew that we had, and I'm curious if you felt this way with Cobras and Fire, was we knew that we had chemistry. You know, when Neely used to do his show, and I would go down to the studio and basically just push his co-hosts out of the way, and because him and I just connected from day one, and it was the unique combination of my brashness and his subtle digs, and it all mixed together well, and then when we took that to the internet, and then the chemistry didn't change. I'm curious for you. You're meeting somebody for the first time because you respect their opinion or their writing or what have you. Was it an instant chemistry thing for you guys, or did you kind of have to find that and feel your way through it?
I'd be interested to hear what Luce would say. I felt it was pretty quick. It came pretty naturally. We're very like-minded in how we view things. But the early shows weren't always very smooth, but there was always that kind of 1 or 2 moments where it was just like, that's what we're trying to get, So I think the chemistry did come somewhat naturally. And we still had to fine-tune everything. We were almost playing like, characters in the first, few episodes, like, almost like a morning show DJ. And once we got to the point where, like you're talking, more like a couple guys just actually hammering out a fun conversation about, music they love or hate, that's when we kind of started, hitting our stride. So,
well, the thing about what Chris and I learned early on about doing this show is, and I'm gonna have to put a what's the word I'm looking for, a thumbtack in this area, is that Chris and I, prior to 2009, we did a okay show, but neither of us could be open and honest as we could have been. Me just dealing with a family business, which for me it was always the family giving me pressure to say, oh, what if somebody hears you? What if somebody hears you? And with Chris being married, he had to kind of tailor his language and maybe what he really thought on things a little bit, because he had the FCC wife looking over his shoulder. And after Chris, lost the wife, and I no longer was associated with family business, and Chris came back to the show after a 2.5-year hiatus, we both just learned to cut loose and really be who we really are, and that show has taken off since then.
Yeah, no, it is a great show too. Kudos to you guys for the long success too there.
Well, dude, you're well on your way. I mean, you're 4 years in. You guys are picking up. It's funny because when I talk to other people, and I'm sure you do this too, man, because we all, for fans that are listening, the podcast community is very, very small. There's I would say literally there's about 50 of us that do it just for the love of doing it, not looking for commercial sponsorship, we might have a sponsor here or there, but for the most part, it's just we do it for the love of doing it. So we all kind of know at least of each other and talk about each other's shows and whatnot. And you guys are certainly picking up steam because, I hear your name floated out there quite a bit from a lot of different, and I mean, obviously Chris and Aaron pump you guys, which is fine. But, the first time I heard about you was the same way you, I think, heard about me was through Toomey, who doesn't have any association other than he's a podcaster that dug your show. So, it really is interesting how it does, it does grow. And, it's kind of a medium now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It's the medium that is probably the most scary to the corporate entities out there, because they have no finger on it. They have no control over it. And being quite honest, the guys that are doing it without looking for money but are just doing it for fun are doing it about 15 times better and in a more compelling way.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely a medium that people like Vinnie Vincent shouldn't be pissing off because they're the only people talking about him. Right. There's, to your point in the community, it's definitely been a major asset and support. Like I said, Toomey and I consider Toomey a close friend now, and I didn't know the guy 3 years ago. And he's been a great asset. Obviously, Chris and Aaron at Decibel Geek have been huge, as far as being just a resource, especially early on. And just having some kind things and throwing our name out there once in a while to help us, grow a little bit. But, I think I'm really interested to see where podcasting is heading, because, at some point you almost think, it's either going to kind of come to a head, like almost kind of fizzle out, like what the kind you're talking about, where we're just doing it for the love, or it's going to get a little bit bigger, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it just stays the same. I just threw 3 what-if scenarios out there.
Right. Well, and you know what, dude? You're right, because there was a time not that long ago, and Neely and I were very involved in it, and me more than anybody, when internet radio was the big thing, and everybody wanted to have an internet radio station, and everybody,
that's right.
Everybody before we had podcasts, every show, it was the old MySpace whoring of your show to anybody that had an internet station. They would put their show out there. So you had you had guys that were putting out their show on 75 internet stations and playing to 140 people because, these internet stations were nothing. It was just a guy with a server in his bedroom. But, and that fizzled out. I mean, I think internet radio as a medium pretty much died. I don't think this is going to die like that, though, because I think the difference is that you don't have to have any structure in this. The only structure that you really need is a good sounding mic and some decent talent. And if you've got those two things, you're ahead of the game versus the guys that are like, and I'm not picking on any truck. I listen to his podcast every week. But I mean, it's annoying as shit to me as a fan when I'm listening to him and he's talking about, Todd LaTorre, I heard the new song off of that, and it's great, and I'll tell you all about it right after I tell you about the chicken sandwich that's available at Burger King. That shit is so tired, and it's so 1995.
It really is, isn't it?
It is. It's not, and I mean, it's sad because Ed has to do that, of course, because, he's on Podcast One and they're paying for sponsorship and all that other shit. And I get all that. But as a listener and as somebody that has 1 ounce of proficiency on my phone here, what's the first thing I do is push the button and hit skip 45 seconds or skip a minute or whatever, because I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, you wonder when the advertisers are going to kind of wake up to that, you know what I mean? They have to get some sort of numbers back, I would think. But, I love that whole thing. It's like, hey, way to tie that together. You know what else ties things together? Rope. Then I'm talking about ace rope.
Dude, it's exactly that, man. It's just, and it will come back eventually to where, I know for a fact that people look at like Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla as like the pinnacle, and certainly, I mean, Rogan, every time he puts one up, he does 1 million fucking listens or views.
Right. Now, there's a reason why people think that,
which is just sickening that it's gotten that way. but even he, and this is one of the things that we've always complained about. I'm curious if you're the same way. We don't want that financial tie into it, because even a guy like Rogan is now softer opinions, and he's now like, well, I would say this, but I can't because of this. And it's like, no, I don't, if you got to limit yourself, then who the fuck wants to listen to it?
Yeah, if it's going to affect the program itself, and shape and mold how you do it, then I think not that it's kind of, you're kind of selling out your listeners. You know what I mean? The people that stick with you and tune in every week. And so I would tend to agree with that. I think there might be a balance. So we just try to cover show costs. You know what I mean? We would be happy with that. But it isn't. Like the hosting fees aren't that detrimental that it's worth selling your soul for.
Well, Bakko, Chris did bring up a good point. We did have a marketing guy contact us earlier this year. And he's a fan of the show, and he was like, you guys got such a great show, and I don't know why you're not sponsored, and, I really would like to take a crack at it because I think I could sell some airtime for you, and, and we met with the guy on the phone. Didn't meet him in person, but we talked with him on the phone, and, Chris and I voiced our thoughts on sponsorship, saying, well, the thing is we're not going to tailor our show to the sponsors. We're not going to do that. We're going to let you know that ahead of time. And he's like, well, that's okay, because I think I could sell it as is. It's like, okay, well, I don't know who you're going to sell it to, but the minute that we use the word faggot or, make some kind of what some people might consider a racist tirade, not that we're, I don't think that we're racist, but people throw so many names at everything these days. That's going to be the first time that sponsor, if they catch wind of it, they're going to go, what kind of a show am I sponsoring here? And he says, oh, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm going to market the show. It's like, okay, have at it. Well, that lasted about 6 weeks. And it was just like, I don't understand why I can't get more people to, purchase these products and this and that. And Chris and I made videos, like these little 1-minute videos, and we did pre-roll and post-roll on every podcast and, all this and that. But regardless of that, is any of your goal to make Cobras and Fire a revenue stream?
For me personally, it's very much the way I looked at when I was in a band, and that is, if there's real money at stake, then I'll worry about it then. In the meantime, it's like I never worried about, playing a gig and they stiffed us on a $20 guarantee. You know what I mean? That's what you do when you're an original band playing a Tuesday night, or they didn't give us the drink tickets. I've played with people that, like, they would quit bands or get in arguments with bars and then get you blacklisted over shit like that. And I always thought, well, who fucking cares? I mean, it's not like they're screwing us out of $1 million in royalties. So yeah, if there was, I don't know what Joe Rogan makes. I don't know that I would ever get to that point anyway. But I'll worry about it then. In the meantime, there's nothing to consider. I'd rather have fun and grow than to work than to make the money be like a goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd
rather have it happen organically. That's a better way to put it.
Right. Well, here's the thing, and we talked about, I think we talked about this on the show or before Christmas break, but one of the things that Joe Rogan was talking to Adam Carolla about prior to starting his podcast, he asked, Adam Carolla, what's the secret to a successful podcast? He goes, you got to be famous. And for both Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla, they both had fame through commercial outlets, be it television or, be it stand-up comedians or radio or whatnot. So those kind of lofty, what do you want to call, financial goals for just normal people like yourself and Chris and I, mm-hmm. I don't really ever see that us ever getting to a Joe Rogan or a Adam Carolla status, because those guys already had a built-in audience.
Well, I'd like to say this, though. I'd like to take the opportunity to announce something. I was listening to your show where you guys talked about the VIP extras, the elite VIPs that Eddie Trunk kind of broke down on the latest KISS tour. I would like to let the people know, if you do listen to our show, I will be using one microphone at the first 2 minutes of every episode, that afterwards I will autograph and sell for $25,000. If you want the cable, it's an extra $2,500.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's how I plan to finance it. Loved your episode in that, by the way. Spot on. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's so ludicrous what they're doing out there, man. I mean, you have to point it out. You cannot, doing what we do, we can't just say, okay, that's okay. You're going to fleece the fans, and that's just perfectly okay. It's fucking ridiculous, man.
I do disagree with Neely a little bit. I think they're wrong for doing that. I flat out think this is out of line. They have taken advantage of their fans so much over the years, and it's almost punitive. And they know this is not just for that super rich guy who, sells coke in Miami and he just loves KISS. They're going to be fans that'll pony out. They'll apply for a couple credit cards they shouldn't afford and get some of this VIP stuff. And it's very underwhelming. End product is part of the problem too.
Well,
but
fuck
I think they're
you,
taking
man.
advantage of
That's
people
just your opinion, man. Fuck you. Your opinion's wrong. I'm sorry to tell you. You're wrong. You shouldn't disagree with me.
Just on that one detail, brah.
Well, Bakko, talk a little bit. I know we're talking about everything but Cobras and Fire. Talk a little bit about how you guys go about picking the stuff that you want to talk about each week, because I mean, you guys really do, considering that it's it's not just topical free for all like we do. You guys do come in with somewhat of an agenda to each episode. I mean, do you guys have to work with each other during the week to come up with what you're going to talk about, or do you kind of, okay, let's talk about Black Sabbath this week, and then just kind of freeform it, or how does it come together?
somewhere between there. It kind of depends on what we're doing, but like our core show, we call it a shits and giggles show, where it's just where we'll take like 5 random topics and play music in between them. Then typically we just have a quick exchange either through email, text, or a quick phone call. But the prep isn't very much. It's like, hey, did you hear? I don't know what LA Guns was replaced by LA Guns at M3. Let's talk about that. And then we'll just kind of riff on the show. We do edit stuff down if things go sideways too much. But if for like the Blacks, we did a Black Sabbath month on them for Halloween in October, and we had a guest in. We kind of did a little more preparation for that. Had a pretty clear structure of how we were doing it. So, but yeah, for the most part, we don't do a ton of prep other than just almost like a list of the topics.
Sure. Now for people that are not technologically savvy enough to just put Overcast or something on their phone and just have it download to their phone every week, where and how and what days should people look for new episodes of the Cobras and Fire podcast?
We try to release a new episode every Tuesday, and we've been pretty consistent on that, so I think we can pretty much lock that in. The interview apps, they pop up as we get them, so we basically take the ones that we like, that we think would be interesting. We don't do, so there'll be like a couple months with none. So you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Facebook, Cobras Fire. We have a Twitter account that one of us gets to once in a while, which is at Cobras Fire, I believe. Right. And it's just, honestly, if you pull up, any type of web search, Google or whatever, you type in Cobras and Fire Podcast, it'll come up. It's important to put in podcast because apparently Monster Magnet has a record called Cobras and Fire.
Right.
Probably our biggest setback.
Yeah. That's interesting that you brought that up, because the first time that I heard the name of your show, that was what I thought. I'm a Monster Magnet fan. I was like, oh, this must be like a stoner rock podcast.
It's just a coincidence. At least I was told. The show was named when I joined, so okay. I agreed to it, and that because we were still trying to feel everything out. But yeah, it is what it is. I think the name is it's fine. Whatever.
No doubt, man. Well, I'll tell you what, dude. People should, and I'm not just saying it because you're on the phone. I'm saying it because I am a fan of what you guys do. People should definitely subscribe to the podcast or download it or find it however you find podcasts and check it out. If you're not listening to us and you love metal and you love classic metal, these guys definitely are doing a great show, and it's in the same vein as us. It's a little bit silly, but there's a lot of musical information in it. So definitely go out there and check it out. And dude, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. It was truly an honor. And thanks for coming on my show, Chris. You did a great job. Getting a lot of great feedback from it. People love the interview. So
awesome.
All right, perfect there, Bakko. Well, we appreciate
Nice to meet you, Neely.
Yeah, same. We appreciate you taking the time out. And since we were talking about Kiss, I thought I'd close this out with a Kiss tune from their Lick It Up release. And if you want to hear,
they're best of the non-makeup era.
Exactly.
Fact.
And if you want to hear a couple of guys breaking loose and talking about music and metal, check out the Cobras and Fire podcast. So here it is. It's Kiss with All Hell's Breaking Loose, exclusively here
on your classic metal show.